We're doing something a bit different and diving deep into the chilling world building of George Orwell's 1984. By looking directly at the original text, we can actually map out exactly how this terrifying society functions, step by step. We're just looking at the story today. We are deconstructing the actual anatomy of a perfect dystopia. So, here's how we're going to do this. To really understand the mechanics of this dystopia, we'll peel back the layers, starting with Big Brother and total surveillance, then how they erase the past, the rigid high, middle, and low class structures, the real purpose behind their endless war, and finally, the ultimate goal of it all. Let's kick things off with part 1, Big Brother and total surveillance. Literally from page 1, when Winston Smith drags himself into his dilapidated building, Victory Mansions, he is greeted by this massive poster. It's this enormous face of a man with a heavy black mustache. But the really terrifying design choice here is that it's contrived so that the eyes literally follow you wherever you move. That caption, "Big Brother is watching you," instantly sets a tone of absolute paralyzing paranoia before a single word is even spoken. And that paranoia? It's actively enforced inside your own home by the telescreen. Think of it like a dulled mirror-like plaque on the wall that just constantly babbles about iron production quotas. But here is the kicker. It receives and transmits at the exact same time. Sure, you can dim it, but you can never, ever shut it off. Because you never know when the thought police are actually plugged in, you literally have to live from a habit that just becomes instinct. You have to assume every single sound you make is overheard and every little movement is scrutinized. It's not just the technology either. Out the window, Winston sees police patrol helicopters literally hovering and snooping into people's homes. But honestly, even they don't really matter compared to the thought police. Or, arguably worse, the amateur spies all around you. The smallest thing can give you away. A nervous tick, an unconscious look of anxiety, maybe muttering to yourself. It is a constant, wildly unpredictable threat coming at you from all sides. Okay, moving inward to part 2, erasing and rewriting the past. You've probably heard these before. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. These paradoxical slogans of the party are plastered absolutely everywhere. We're talking the white face of the Ministry of Truth, inscribed on coins, on stamps, even on cigarette packets. It's a constant assault on the citizens' minds. The goal isn't just to spread some propaganda, it's to fundamentally break down the very mechanics of logic in the human brain. And that psychological breakdown is paired with the physical destruction of history itself. Winston realizes that the past, literally starting from yesterday, has been completely abolished. Every record is destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every single date altered. It leaves citizens entirely unmoored from reality. I mean, if the party says London was always this miserable, you have absolutely no way to prove otherwise. You are, as Winston notes, completely alone in a monstrous world. So how do you even survive a place like that? Well, you have to master a concept called doublethink. It is this deliberate, conscious splitting of intelligence. It allows a party member, especially the higher-ups, to completely fabricate a piece of history, know with absolute certainty that it is a lie, and yet genuinely believe it's the absolute truth. It's wild to think about, right? It is the ultimate dislocation of reality. Let's zoom out a bit for part 3, the high, middle, and low. When Winston starts reading this heavy, black volume with irregular print, it honestly feels like uncovering a massive conspiracy. He literally has to hide this thing between his feet at work just to read it in secret. And what it reveals is mind-blowing. Despite all the seemingly irrevocable changes in their world, the fundamental structure of society has never truly altered. It operates like a gyroscope, always spinning right back to the exact same equilibrium. The book maps out this incredibly rigid stratification of Oceania. At the apex is Big Brother, sure, but just below him is the inner party. They make up less than 2% of the population and are basically the brain of the state. Then you have the outer party at 13%. They're the hands, heavily surveilled and living totally austere lives. And finally, the proles, making up a massive 85% of the population. Social mobility, it's strictly forbidden. The proles cannot graduate into the party. In fact, if a prole actually shows some real talent and might cause trouble, the thought police simply mark them down and eliminate them. Goldstein then explains this fascinating yet incredibly tragic cycle of human history that the party has somehow finally hacked. Historically, the middle group always enlists the low group by pretending to fight for liberty and equality, right? They use the low to overthrow the high. But the second they succeed, the middle becomes the new high and immediately shoves the low right back down into servitude. The party's entire system is specifically designed to freeze this cycle permanently so they never ever lose power. But that begs the question, if wealth and technology can solve the inequality that drives these cycles, why does the party intentionally keep society so impoverished? Which brings us perfectly to part 4, the purpose of endless war. This is where things get deeply unsettling. The book points out that machine technology actually made human inequality largely unnecessary. But, and this is a huge but, an all-around increase in wealth would destroy a hierarchical society. Think about it. If everyone had short working hours, plenty of food, a nice house, the masses would suddenly have leisure time. They'd become literate. They'd learn to think for themselves. And they would very quickly realize that the privileged minority has absolutely no actual function. So the party found a chilling solution. In Oceania, the war isn't actually meant to be won. It's an internal mechanism. The essential act of this endless war is the literal destruction of the products of human labor. It is a way to just shatter surplus materials, like building a massive floating fortress just to scrap it, so that those materials can't ever be used to make the masses too comfortable, and therefore too intelligent. By deliberately creating these chronic shortages, the party engineers a psychology of absolute scarcity. They make even tiny privileges seem like massive wins. A lump of real horseflesh or a proper razor blade, that feels like extreme wealth. By keeping everyone right on the brink of hardship and in a state of constant, panicked war hysteria, handing over all power to a small elite suddenly seems like the only natural, unavoidable condition for basic survival. And now, we reach the final, darkest layer. Part 5, the ultimate goal of power. Winston grasps everything we've just talked about. He understands the how perfectly. But the underlying motive, the true why, that is what drives him to completely question his own sanity. Why go through all this immense, impossibly elaborate effort just to crush human freedom? Well, you see, the party isn't a traditional ruling class. They don't care about bloodlines or passing wealth down to their specific children. They are an adoptive organization. They honestly don't care who specifically wields power, as long as the hierarchical structure itself remains completely unchanged. They want to perpetuate the party itself, not themselves as individuals. Ultimately, Winston doesn't get his final answer from Goldstein's book. He gets it from O'Brien during his brutal interrogation in the Ministry of Love. O'Brien straight up tells Winston that Goldstein's whole program, the idea of a slow accumulation of knowledge leading to a proletarian rebellion, is total nonsense. He forces Winston to abandon any dream of violent insurrection. The rule of the party is forever, period. That is the starting point of their reality. And I'm going to leave you with O'Brien's terrifying, taunting question to Winston, a question that really strips away every political illusion you might have. What do you think happens when a regime stops pretending to care about humanity, stops pretending it's building some kind of utopia, and simply pursues absolute power entirely for its own sake? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly recommend you let that question sink in for a bit.